It's just me. Who else is on?
Haley, it's Pedro.
Hello.
Just me and you and John's here. I have a bunch of people. I have like 10 other people waiting to get on.
Okay.
I'm gonna wait till John tunes in and hopefully Chris. And we have the intern, hopefully to join us,
Oh, good.
who will be taking minutes.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean to come across as a prima donna. I'm so worthless when it comes to notes, and I can't think and write notes. At the same time, my handwriting is it's not a good thing.
No, I understand. That's why I can't focus on the meeting
I'm same
and
thing.
participate if I'm taking notes.
Exactly. Hi, Jonathan.
Hello all. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
No headphones for you today?
Sorry, what?
No headphones for you today?
Oh, no, I'm here with Jack. Barbara's flying back from Portland, Oregon as we speak, so.
She's done with her rogue. She's done with her rogue activities in Portland.
Yeah, she was helping her 95-year-old mother move into her sister's house, so.
Wow. I've got an 86-year-old person living in my house now.
Yeah. But that's young.
So I've got a waiting room of 10 people.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got something from Nan, so I think she's passing around the Zoom link. I just forwarded it, so I don't know if that's,
Yeah.
but I sent you guys something that was, she sent me a few minutes ago.
I read that. So I was looking for the housing study on the town website, and it doesn't appear to be posted.
Really? I feel like it was, maybe it's buried now. Because I remember when it came out, we posted it. At least we had posted the draft. I don't know.
Maybe it was like on the front page, but it doesn't exist in any department.
Huh.
14 people.
Wow.
Wait a couple more
We're a
minutes.
popular subcommittee. I'm assuming, I guess Garfield's not coming, but we'll figure out a good time for him, maybe.
I wouldn't know. I didn't hear back from him.
Okay. I mean, I don't know either, I'm assuming.
I mean, I checked planning, I checked the building department, the select board. I don't know where else it would be.
Yeah, it was on the website when we first, when the draft came out, we were going to speak about it. And then you might be right. Maybe it was taken off the homepage and never put back on. I'll shoot Chris an email just so he has it in his to-do list. Or just ask him.
He was supposed to join us as well. I'm
Okay.
hoping that
Well, he probably will be.
they do show up.
Who was supposed to join us?
Chris, he'll be
Okay.
late, but will join the housing meeting as soon as possible. He just texted me.
Oh, okay. So we can ask him when he gets on.
Go ahead and let all these people in.
Pedro, who's the intern that's taking notes?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Oh, it's
Hey-
Tate.
Yeah.
That's why Tate's there.
Hey,
Oh,
Tate.
hey, Tate, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
There he is. Good. I was about to start taking notes, but I will not. All right, my clock just turned to 1 o'clock. So with that, I'll call this meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's June 16th, 2021 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. So those wishing to connect to this meeting could find information on how to do so on the town website and related to this agenda for this meeting. They could also go to the town clerk's office and seek the agenda there. I'll go ahead and get the meeting started. First item on the agenda would be to take a roll call of members of the subcommittee. It'll be a roll call attendance. Lee,
Hi, I'm here.
John,
I'm here.
and Garfield is not present. And I'm Pedro Pichano, I'm here. Second up is the review, discussion, approval of the meeting minutes of August 2nd meeting. So any discussion on the meeting, on
I
the
thought-
meeting minutes?
Those are the ones that you took, that you.
Yeah, that I took and sent out and that you commented on or
I amended
amended.
very slightly, so move to approve as amended.
Second,
All right, move to approve as amended. Roll call vote, Lee?
I,
Lee? Hey, John?
Aye.
And Pedro, aye. So the meeting minutes are approved. Our third item is a discussion of a short-term rental
Sorry,
policy that we are going to discuss today. I put together, as chair of the committee, I put together a sort of talking points or proposed policy for us to review.
Pedro, can I ask one
yes.
question before we get started?
Go ahead.
Just for transparency, I'm just curious if there's anyone on our committee that has owns any rental property? And
I
if,
do not.
okay, and if they do,
Yeah, no, I own 3 rental properties,
okay,
two in Great Barrington.
okay. So I don't know, is that something that we should discuss? I mean, I'm not trying to stir the pot or anything, but is that something we should discuss in terms of if there's any conflict or how do we feel about that? Or does this need to go through the AG's office? Or since we're a subcommittee, we're just doing recommendations, so we're not making anything other than that, so.
Right, but I think for the public that's gathered today, what Lee is referring to is a discussion point that we have made, and it was brought to us by Ed Abrams, that since we as committee members are potentially benefiting from any policy that we put together regarding short-term rentals, that there may be a conflict of interest. So for now, since we're not actually enacting any policy, we're just sort of discussing the potential for an action of a policy. I think it's okay for us to discuss. I also have had some discussions where it appears that if whatever policy we put together has to go through town meeting, so it wouldn't be that we or the select board or any individual would be putting through a policy. It would be something that would be voted on by the legislature of the town. But we still, I think, need some clarity, some legal clarity on the issue, and I'll make sure to make a point of this and to see if I can't get some clarity for our next meeting. So with that said, I think we can go into a discussion of what we discussed. Before we start, I'd like to just point out a couple things that I found in my section of the housing study, which is the fourth item on our agenda. But in that section, there is some information on short-term rentals in Great Barrington. So we have in town 954 total available rental units. Of those, the Department of Revenue has targeted or has identified 19% or 179 of those units as potential short-term rentals. Or not potential short-term rent. Well, let me say that again. They've identified 179 as short-term rentals, but they consider only 151 of those to qualify by the definition of short-term rentals. In other words, there is some remainder of those available units that are either a mix or just there's some kind of confusion with the Department of Revenue as to their status. Of the 179 short-term rentals that are available, 89% are complete homes that are available, and roughly 10% are rooms within private homes. So that we can assume that they're owner-occupied short-term rentals. So 10% and 89% of complete homes.
Well,
Of that 80, sorry.
I don't think they have to be owner occupied. My tenant living next door is renting a room to someone who works in town. I don't participate in that in any way. But
Right, so here's the
owner occupied.
a good example of the sort of confusion or discrepancy of some of the data that we have on this. The last point I have that I got from the housing study is that of that 89% of the short-term rentals, which are complete home rentals, roughly 30% of those are 3-bedroom homes. The rest are either 1 or 2 bedrooms. There were no 4-bedroom or higher that were mentioned in the housing study. So do any of you want to, John or Lee, want to start the discussion? I could try to put the proposed policy on for everybody, if that would be helpful.
I guess, you know, what stood out with the housing needs study for me is the amount of residents that are, or renters that are cost burdened. So those are people that are paying more than 30% of their income on housing related costs, and they have difficulty paying for necessities such as food or clothing or transportation.
Sure, but Lee, sorry, could I stop you there for a second? Because the discussion for now is specifically about this short-term rental proposed policy. We'll get to the housing needs. I only brought it to housing needs, those points in the housing needs, because they were related to the short-term rentals. So if we could just stick for now to the short-term rental policy that I gave you guys, and I'm trying to put it up here on the screen for everybody, and I'll get that up in 1 second.
Where did this come from, Pedro?
It's, I put it together, and it's based on some proposals that were made in Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, in a couple other towns. I can't remember, say a couple of other towns near or in around Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of pieced it together, and just to kind of have some discussion points, you know, some places to start. Give me a second here. Subcommittee.
So the reason why I brought up the housing needs study was I thought we were just talking about in the greater context of why we are actually even having this discussion, but I shall go forward.
Okay, maybe we should elaborate on why we're having this discussion. I mean, both, I know you have, John and I have both had a lot of discussions with members of the community about some troubles or about short-term rentals becoming pervasive in town, short-term rentals taking away rental opportunities in town. And so we're just trying to get ahead of this issue. We've had, I know on this committee, on the planning board, of which both John and I are both members, and I understand that on the select board as well, there's been some discussion around this topic. And we've all kind of been waiting for some data to be able to address the issue and to put together policy that would be related to to the issues that we're facing here in Great Barrington. At our last meeting, it was determined that we should just go ahead and with whatever data we do have, whatever information we have, anecdotal and otherwise, just try to put together something that we can present to the select board and that maybe we can take to town meeting. So that's why we're here. Lee, John, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Well, it's clear that the influence of short-term rentals has had an adverse impact on long-term rentals in the town. There's no doubt about that. And it's also probably contributed to the inflation of real estate prices. Because if you, let's say, as an example, you have a single family house that you rent year round for, maybe you make $25,000 on it. And that same unit in short term, you'd be making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. So obviously there's a huge incentive there for people to do that and eliminate long-term rentals.
Right. And so that again, I want to just be careful because that's the sort of concept, or that's the idea, the sort of information that we get across the country. How pervasive that is in our town, it's again still up for question. I gave these numbers out at the beginning just so we can discuss that. 19% of our rental stock is currently used on a short-term basis, and 51 of those are identified by the Department of Revenue as being used as on a short-term basis. So that's 151 units of 954 total rental available. So it's substantial. It's 20%. So there is something to it. And I want to say too that I have no doubt that that what you're saying could be affecting rental prices and valid or real estate prices in general in town. I have no doubt that could be a possibility. Something happened to the thing I have
just
here.
speaking from my experience working for Construct, when we look at just affordable housing, there's over 600 households waiting for affordable housing, and we look at the area median income, which in Great Barrington at this point, the 100% income level is for a family of four is 88,700. So what we're seeing is, people that work here can't afford to live here, and this is increasing. So, what this discussion is, how do we address that? How do we address the concerns and the lack of housing that's affordable to people that are just trying to send their kids to school here and work here. And, we just need to look on Main Street to see the amount of help wanted signs and closed signs in some of our stores and restaurants to see it, staffing is an issue. So I think, we have the data we need, and it's really up to us to present something that can go to ultimately town meeting for the citizens to vote upon. So
certainly of those 600, and again, I think we're getting off the topic again of short-term rentals, but since you brought it up, of that 600 odd number of people that are waiting for affordable housing, how many of those are in Great Barrington?
Well, they're looking for grants. So they can be, placed anywhere in Southern Berkshires, but there's a lot of, in terms of Great Barrington residents. Is that your question?
Yeah. How many people are looking that are specifically either living here now or are wanting to, to live in town.
I would have to get back to you on that specific question. But what I can say is that a great amount of, in terms of the breakdown, we have 36% are from, or 61% are female households, or is a household, head of household, and it's a female. So we have a lot of single moms looking for housing in Great Barrington, and 36% is from the BIPOC community, and 60% looking for housing, affordable housing, are tenants that are living with a disability. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because you had asked me to talk about the demographics related to the housing study. But coming back to what you presented, yeah, so let's talk about this. So this is
okay, so back to short-term rentals. This is the sample policy that I sent you guys, you and Jonathan and Garfield.
Yep.
For discussion today. Were you able to review it?
Yep.
Because if you guys want to, go ahead.
No, I reviewed it. So
John, Lee, you have any comments to begin with? Anything that you see here that you'd like to discuss that pops out at you that's missing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, definition of what a short-term rental is. Rentals of 31 days, you have 30 days, rentals of 31 days or 30 days, consecutive days or fewer. So that would be kind of obvious what is the definition of a short-term rental. So, do we want to pick it apart, saying, is it less than 30 days, less than 28 days, less than 31 days? I believe in Lennox, they use 31 days, consecutive days or fewer. Let's see.
Yeah, to me, 30 days seems appropriate. There are other places that consider 90 days or less, or 60 days or less. So, which, and I think that it's somewhere in this proposal, I have a 60-day limit that needs to be corrected. But
okay.
I think the 30-day is appropriate.
Okay. And then I guess the definition is, I'm looking down here, and the other question I had was, what's by right? So, a lot of people are worried that our current owner occupiers of a single family home, they're worried about what will we allow by what right. So I'm just looking for that in here.
Well, again, we've got these regs here. So maybe we go to this section here. These would be your, how you would be allowed to use them. You'd have to register with the Board of Health, and you'd have to get a permit to operate.
Okay. So we would establish a registry, and anything that, if you're renting your home out for 30 days or less, you would need to register as a short-term rental. And I assume there'd be penalties for failing to register.
Well, there's two types. There's the resident short-term and all other short terms. So in here, we've got, I was hoping we could have more sort of robust conversation, but in here, we've got in number 8, if you read number 8,
Yep.
There are limits to how long.
Yep. 7 days. Okay.
You could have. Resident short-term rentals shall be exempt.
Yep.
From the minimum stay duration. So if you're living there while you're renting short-term, then there's no limit. If you're not living there, then there's a limit.
Who is a resident? Is a tenant a resident?
Good point.
Is a tenant and resident.
So in other words, if if
So
you're
I-
renting your house to somebody and that tenant,
Well, thanks for the offer. I just ate, and actually, I was gonna go, I was about 5 minutes. late.
Philip Ornstein, please.
Yes,
You can mute
sorry.
everyone.
If you can mute yourself, thank you.
Jeez.
Yeah, so the question John had is who's a resident? So meaning what John's earlier comment that he rents a house to somebody and his renter rents a room in his house to somebody else. Sometimes that's necessary for the leaseholder to be able to afford the place. Hopefully a leaseholder is not doing it to
Well, I
make
think
money
that,
off of it.
yeah, I mean, for me, that seems like it could be a loophole that someone could take advantage. I mean, I guess I think of someone, owner occupier, I'm just reading this off, obviously, owner occupier of a single family home that is your primary residence, not your second home. So if people start subletting, they could get around that.
No, but it's a primary residence for her.
But do they own it? Is it, so it's tracing it back to you, Jonathan, to someone that is the owner of the resident. So even though you're renting it out to someone and they sublet it out, I would think that you would always trace it back to the original owner occupier.
I don't have anything to do with it, so.
No, I'm just saying in general, if we're talking about subletting.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I have no problem with a tenant, renting a room to someone. I don't have a problem with that. It's a lot different than, a non-resident landlord, non-resident owner renting out short-term all the time.
Now you, though, as a property owner would probably not like it if your leaseholder would rent out the home for 2 months in the summertime for an exorbitant amount of money while they vacation someplace.
Well, that would be subject to a lease, so no.
Okay, so I made that example just to see how we can, if there's any language that needs to be put into policy
Absolutely,
that,
yeah.
that states that, or if we leave it to the responsibility of the property owner. So the property owner there has an interest in maintaining their property and protecting their property. So we would be assuming that they would include those caveats in their lease to their leasee. However, there's no reason to preclude us from not including some language in any policy proposals that we have. Thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we should for that reason. I think that's a good point. I'm not prepared to come up with that language, but I think we should just make a note that that needs to be addressed.
Well, I mean, just to use this as an example, my tenant is providing housing for someone who works in the hospitality business in town. That's exactly the issue that we're trying to address over and over and over. And I don't want to restrict that.
Okay, so going back to it though, I want to kind of take you out of it, Jonathan. So we're talking about, owners that have second homes. So if you're not living in your home and you're renting it out as a second home, that's kind of, we're distinguishing between someone who's an owner occupier that rents a room or two out of their primary residence versus someone that has a second home that they do not live in, that, they're not there. So, there's two different types of rentals we're talking about. So one's an owner occupier that's actually living in their primary residence and renting out, a bedroom or two versus someone that has an investment property that, is renting it out. So I think we just need to make sure that, we're separating the two. But that is a really
I've-
good, we need to talk about subletting and that, so.
I think there's actually three
And three probably, yeah.
persons that we're referring to. We're referring to, the person who is renting on a short-term basis a home that's not their primary residence. We're talking about the person who is renting rooms in their primary residence, and now we're talking about lessees of long-term rentals
Mhm,
who are renting rooms on a short-term basis.
mhm.
So just to be clear, the question I think that's important to address is whether or how those lessees should be restricted from renting in a certain manner. In other words, what John's tenant is doing, I think is fine, perfectly fine. However, if John's tenant decides to leave John's residence for 2 months in the summertime and rent
Yeah,
out that property for $15,000 a month or whatever for 2 months to somebody who's going to rent it for 2 months on a short, as a short term, sort of in that short term rental sphere, I would think that would be a problem, because it's basically the type of activity that we're trying to monitor and protect, or in this policy that we're trying to put together here.
mhm. Yeah,
So there should be some language with regards to that, unless of course we leave it up to the property owner to be able to protect their property within their lease. In other words, I'm going to finish my sentence. I don't know if I agree with what I'm going to say, but I'm just going to finish what I was saying. In other words, do we leave it up to the property owners to restrict the short-term rental of the entire home without the leasee being present?
well
Well,
then,
And
yeah,
the example that you just created, if someone is subletting for 2 months, that's not a short-term rental
exactly, that's what I was gonna say.
as we're defining it. Nor should it be. If they're renting it to a different tenant every week, that's different.
Yeah. So they would come under the same regulations as what a short-term rental is. So if they're renting, if they're subleasing out to, on a long-term rental basis, that's,
I mean,
Okay.
I think we need to think about, what the point here is. Is it to discourage short-term rentals? Is it to tax short-term rentals? Is it to ban short-term rentals? What are we looking to do here?
Well, as you identified at the beginning of this meeting, we're looking to apparently there's interest in restricting the use of property as short-term rentals in town in order to protect rental opportunities for those who are looking to rent in town on a long-term basis.
yeah, we're trying to open up the market for long-term renting. So basically right now it's very restricted right now. So people that are looking to be long-term renters, there's not enough properties out there. So we're trying to, expand the amount of rental properties for long-term renters, for people that are, living here and working here. Because, we can't keep up with building more housing. That's not going to happen. So this is one way of addressing the shortage of properties. So we're trying to open up the longer term rental market. And this is one way to address it.
I mean, historically, it was pretty common for snowbirds to rent basically a long-term rental, six months or so. And they always expired at the beginning of June, I think. And then all of those people we're back in the rental market with no place to go. But on the other hand, if we have empty houses in the winter that could provide housing, that's not a bad thing. I mean, empty house is a bad thing. Using it to provide housing is a good thing. But again, it's not short-term as you're defining it.
So
Right.
what are you saying, Jonathan, with that?
Well, I just don't, I certainly wouldn't want whatever is proposed to discourage snowbirds from renting their house in the winter to a tenant, for the duration, or maybe it's by the month or whatever.
Well, I think that goes to the point of defining short-term rentals as either 30 or 60 days
Mhm.
or less.
Well, the governor used 30 days as a trigger.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fair enough.
So to the point of why we're even discussing this, in the 10 years between 2010 and I'm going to say in the 8 years between 2010 and 2018, we lost 195 units of rental property, according to the housing study. So there is more anecdotal evidence that these properties potentially could be converted into short-term rentals for people.
I think.
All right, so let me do something really quick here because there's a lot of chat. So I'm going to read a couple of comments. So here's one. So the town of Great Barrington is worried about housing needs. Does the committee realize the reasons most landlords went to short-term? Any thoughts about that?
Money.
So why did most landlords go to short-term?
Money.
Money, exactly. Anybody who'd like to email me, I can send this proposal to them. I'm not sure how I can make it downloadable. Long-term landlords basically have no rights with long-term rentals. If or when landlords are protected. When it comes to evictions, as landlord, we have been put through the ringer with trying to help Section 8, Stockbridge housing, or disabled renters. So now I try to understand why so many landlords have switched to short-term. Okay.
Well, I think, we do have to define, what is by right, because a lot, some of these commenters might feel that we're trying to attack, what is by right. So we're saying, if it's your primary home, if it's your primary residence, if you're owner occupier, by right, you can continue to rent bedrooms in your own house. So, that isn't even part of this equation as far as I can see from our discussion. So I think, that needs to be.
Well, I think though that what this commenter is saying, what she's trying to communicate is that, landlords are going to short-term rentals because it's more lucrative for them. If we were to put restrictions on short-term rentals, there's a potential for those landlords to not buy into the program as we were trying to outline here, and that they'll just rent their properties for more money, which will drive up the rental costs.
Well, I mean, so what they're going to have to do is rent to long-term, to people that are looking for long-term rentals. So that's what we're trying to achieve, is we're trying to open up the market for people that want to live here full-time, that want to live here long-term. So, yes, they're going to not make a quick, as much money as they would from a short-term rental, but they're opening up the market to people that actually work and live in this community. So they're still going to make their money. We're not stopping them from having that investment property. We're just saying that, in fairness to what's happening in the community and the lack of housing in general, we're just trying to open it up so people that are, living and working and going to school in this community can afford to live here. So, I think the argument is, we're trying to discourage people coming here and just seeing it as an investment. This is a community. This is, living, working, breathing people that are going to school and try to make a living, and locals that have lived here. So, we're trying to discourage people saying, oh, this isn't, an investment. We're saying, well, go to other, tourist destination and, maybe look into making an investment, but we're trying to balance it. So for me, I absolutely understand that we're trying to afford where we're living here, but we're just also trying to look at the bigger issue of a lack of housing for the community. So,
Well, to your point, I think you're right about what your sentiments are.
A
But I
couple of
don't-
us have
I-
some questions.
But I don't believe that the proposed policy that we have before us actually is restricting in any way. What we're trying to do is to get a sort of handle on how much of this activity is going on in town.
Nick
and-
Ward?
And get people to sort of, to create a registry. I don't think we're trying to get people to give up their profit-making, ventures or to change their rental status from a long-term to a short-term or vice versa. So, that's what the policy does now anyway, as written.
Pedro,
I'll get for those of you out there, I see that there's some people with their hands up. I'll get to you in just a second.
Yeah.
Let me read this one comment here I think is interesting. So it reads like this: some of us operating short-term rentals are local single moms who found themselves unable to work. Let me wait for the siren to pass.
You're going to jail for a long time, buddy.
hey,
Who
Pedro,
found themselves unable.
can you silence everyone, please?
I wish I could have
Lee,
no
can you
control
shut
of
the
that.
fuck up?
Okay. Okay. I think I've got everybody.
Nick, get off the road. This is full of niggers, not gonna lie.